Jimmy Johnson's going to be on Fox Football Now Monday at 11 Eastern on FS1. So let me just start with this. You used to coach the Cowboys. They have a lot of needs, most of them defensively, but they go and get a wide receiver, a very, very good wide receiver. Did that bother you at all, Jimmy?
No, it just looked like they're going to try to outscore people because obviously they needed some defensive help. But, with CeeDee Lamb, he is really an outstanding player, a spectacular player. And they'd been following him for quite some time. And so when he came available, I'm sure they jumped on it and bypassed the defensive player.
Jimmy, could I make an argument that with the rules now in place over the last 2 to 3 drafts, the players that have been drafted and surprised us were much better than we thought and better early? It's been a lot of Lamar Jacksons. It's been Josh Allen's. It's been Josh Jacobs. It's been offensive guys. That the rules now dictate if you can go either way, you maybe want to lean offense, and maybe it's just an offensive league. Can I make that argument for Dallas?
I think it has gone that way, Colin. Really for the last few years because of the rule changes. Back in the old day, run the football, play great defense, don't give up a lot of points,
right.
Don't turn it over. But we've seen some teams extremely successful the last few years that were marginal on defense and didn't run the ball a whole lot and threw it all over the field and scored a lot of points. And so I think because of the rule changes, you're probably right in that, you got to be offensively minded, to win in this league. And the number one thing, actually one thing that hasn't changed, Bill Belichick was on my boat a few years ago, and he said, we were talking about the players, and I said, with these rule changes, I said, I've always said, the quarterback is the guy. I said, but you know who the second most important guy is? He said, no. Yeah, I said, the second most important guy is your backup quarterback. So it goes quarterback. It is a quarterback-driven league. If you've got a franchise quarterback, a guy that can make plays, then you can kind of support him with some of those receivers and, with a running back, et cetera, but you got to have the quarterback.
So Green Bay has needs. They need offensive line. I thought last year was a little shaky. They need another wide receiver. I still think defensively they have some needs, and they get a backup quarterback. What bothered me, Jimmy, how does it land with Aaron Rodgers? I mean...
I think he's comfortable in his position. I actually I don't dislike the move because they saw an opportunity to get a quarterback that they are very high on and let him develop. And the receivers that they might need, they can pick them up in the second and third round. This is a deep draft as far as receivers. And so, I'm sure they're looking at some receivers in the second and third round.
Yeah, and you think, Aaron, we know Brady didn't love Garoppolo hovering over him. It's one of those things, as a coach, you would have drafted somebody behind Aikman if you thought he was a steal.
Well, I did. I did Steve Walsh. And so, now that caused a little bit of tension with Troy, but I don't think it's going to cause any kind of tension with Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers obviously is a extremely, as you know, confident individual with a big ego. And so I don't think he's going to be threatened by some rookie.
Now, by the way, did you approach Jimmy Johnson, the Hall of Fame coach, did you approach each round differently? Because you were a master at this stuff.
Yeah, you know what I did, Colin, is I identified 3 or 4 players in each round that I wanted to target and I wanted to get. And obviously, if one of those 2 or 3 players weren't picked in the previous round, I dropped them to the top of the next round. But I had a handful of players that I wanted to coach, and coaches that have come down and visited with me over the years, they say that's one of the best things. It says, because, some players are going to be successful in our system that might not be successful in a different system. By the same token, there's some great players on other teams that we don't want. And so you got to identify, who fits into your system, who fits into your culture. And really, obviously you scout, all these, 500 or 600 players. But then you narrow it down and you pick about 15 players that you want to come out with 7 or 8 of those players out of this draft.
Yeah. Jimmy Johnson joining us. So, character issues we always hear about, right? And where do you fall? The Raiders got a corner. Earlier Peter Schrager said a couple of teams took the Ohio State corner off the board. They had character issues. I always understood teams take injury. They have injury flag guys you just take off your board. Jimmy, what if you love a player and he was a little bit of a jerk in college to teammates? How do you land on that stuff?
I think you've got to know him. Like for me, I always graded my scouts and I graded my coaches on how they evaluated players. I had one particular scout that, hey, if he was jaywalking, he was going to cross him off the board. Yeah, and by the same token, I had some coaches. The guy could have been a serial killer, and he said, hey, let's take a chance.
Yeah.
So you have to know your scouts, you have to know your coaches and their evaluation. But more than anything else, you've got to know the player. You've got to, there are going to be some players that have had some transgressions, that have made some mistakes early in their career, maybe in high school, that you're going to say, hey, I can understand that, and so you've got to know what the character issue is. Now, is he a bad person? Is he going to be a bad team player? Is he going to take away from the team concept? Well, then, you move away from him. But if he made a mistake and he's overcome it and he's a good person, you take a chance on him.
Jimmy Johnson joining us, 2 Super Bowl championships, a college football national title in 1987. Just an all-time great coach. This past year inducted emotionally into the Hall of Fame, and we all witnessed that. So, Belichick has lost several good players, hasn't replaced them. Gronk leaves. He could have gotten a tight end from Tampa. They got 3. He took a pick. He's accumulating a stockpile of 25 picks in the next 2 years. And he could have had Teddy Bridgewater. He could have had tight ends from Tampa. Boy, Jimmy, I don't mean to be cynical, but it looks like he's stockpiling picks for a big move, maybe for a college quarterback in a year.
Well, I don't know. I know what you're thinking about in a year. I don't know if he's going to be able. He's not going to have bad enough record to get that player.
But what if he has enough picks that
to move up,
and he gives somebody 9 picks, Jimmy?
It's going to be interesting to see how Stidham does. It's going to be interesting to see if he picks up a veteran quarterback, which could happen. But the thing about it, he's got some players that he's identified that he's going to be able to pick up in the 2nd and 3rd round, and really, some of those 2nd and 3rd rounders turn out to be really spectacular players, and players that fit into his system. It'll be interesting to see. I do believe this. I think the AFC East now it's wide open.
Yes,
with Brady out and with. You might say New England rebuilding a little bit, and with Buffalo, with their resurgence, and with the Dolphins, they should be a lot better. It's going to be an interesting division.
Yeah, I kind of like what Brian Flores is doing. I mean, you live in the Keys. I got to tell you, I watched Brian Flores, Jimmy, and he's, first of all, he got rid of some expensive guys. He got a veteran quarterback who's a smart guy, competes. They accumulate draft picks. They spend a lot of draft capital on cornerbacks, which I know you liked him, and I know Belichick does. So it looks like to me when I look at Miami, Jimmy, they didn't have to trade any picks to get their quarterback. It feels like they're pretty close. That guys like you and Parcells, you turn stuff around in 18 months. I think Miami's closer than people think to being really competitive, Jimmy.
I agree with you, Colin. I look at the way they played without their best defensive back, there at the end of the year, with just a makeshift football team. I look at the way they played at the end of the year, and you add the players that they have added this offseason and through the draft, they're going to be a competitive team. I mean, it's going to be interesting just to see. It's going to be interesting to see if Tua, how quick he jumps into the lineup.
Would you be worried to play him early, Coach, with that hip?
Yeah, I would be. I'd be concerned, and plus, with old Fitz magic, you never can tell. He's liable to make some things happen there early. I do believe this. He will be a great mentor, for Tua. I mean, to have him, everybody, he's one of the smartest, not only players, but individuals walking. And he will be a great mentor for Tua.
Yeah. I wonder, would you keep Fitzpatrick around for a second year just to be a mentor?
Good, and with Chan Gailey, has worked with him before, so he knows the system. They're on the same page. I think that's a good matchup. With Fitzpatrick and with Chan Gailey, and now with Tua coming on.
Well, Terry Bradshaw came on yesterday and he had a song for us, so I don't expect you to.
He has played that song 15 times in my ear.
We don't expect you to have a song, although you're a fisherman. Have you gone out fishing yet today?
Not today, but I will probably in the next couple of days. Hey, with this social isolation, and social distance, I can really have my distance from people about 20 miles offshore.
Hey, one more. So you basically ran your draft and were a personnel expert. But I've got this theory that when Tom went down to Tampa and he talked to Jason Light, I don't think it would be out of bounds for Tom to say, listen, I'm 43. I don't want to get the you-know-what kicked out of me. You got to address that O-line. And that he could say, Jason, can you look O-line first pick? Because, by the way, they moved up and got the best right tackle available. Is that the way? Do you think that's possible that Brady told them, listen, I would come here, but I'm worried about your O-line? Would that be possible?
I think without question. Actually, Jason worked for me. He was one of my scouts when I was with the Miami Dolphins. And I've visited with him 2 or 3 different times. There's no question he's the type of individual that would take suggestions, from Tom Brady. Really, Tom's more experienced than half the coaches in this league. And so you ought to use some of that knowledge.
Jimmy, I just love having you on. You're a busy guy, and you're so kind to our show, and I appreciate it.
Well, Colin, I will leave you with this. Little quarantine magic.
Little quarantine crazy?
Quarantine crazy. He got that from Tammy. Tammy says, boy, this is quarantine crazy. Terry says, man, that sounds like a song. Let me put some words to it.
He did. And he did a good job. Hi, everybody. Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from The Herd or go watch a few segments from other shows on FS1.